The Second International and the Trial of the Terrorists by Georgy Dimitrov. It is impossible without a feeling of deep indignation to read the telegram about the trial of the terrorist Trotsky-Zinoviev Center, sent in such haste to the Soviet government by the official representatives of the Labor and Socialist International and the International Federation of Trade Unions, signed by de Bruckner, Adler, Citrine, and Chevenels. Did these reactionary leaders act with the same alacrity when the Communist International proposed to the Labor and Socialist International that joint assistance be given to the Austrian miners when they were fighting with weapons in hand in October 1934? Did they hasten to reply to the repeated appeals for joint action made by the Communist International for the protection of the Ethiopian people when it was attacked by Italian fascism? Not at all. One recalls that they stated at that time that they were not competent to enter into negotiations on this question, and that it was necessary to wait for a session of the executive of the Labor and Socialist International. But at that time it was a question of a really just and honest matter, the defense of the vital interests not only of the Spanish, but of the international proletariat, and of the fight against the most unjust, disgraceful war of conquest. But now they show themselves fully competent, on their own account, without consulting their organizations, to take under their protection the accused terrorists who had raised their criminal hands against the leader of the Soviet power. It has always been so. When the proletarian court in the Soviet Union wielded its avenging sword against saboteurs who scattered glass splinters in the workers' food, poisoned collective farm cattle and spoiled machines, or against spies and military saboteurs, agents of fascism who destroyed railway tracks and caused explosions, such reactionary leaders as Citrine and Adler invariably came forward to protect and intercede for this counter-revolutionary gang of ruffians. And it often happened that when the apparatus of the proletarian dictatorship caught agents of foreign fascism in the act of preparing attacks on the leaders of the land of socialism, the sympathy of the reactionary leaders of the Labor and Socialist International and the International Federation of Trade Unions was not on the side of the workers and collective farmers of the Soviet Union, but on the side of their bitterest enemies. The leaders of the Labor and Socialist International sent no telegram of sympathy whether to the Communist Party of the Soviet Union or to the Soviet government when Comrade Kirov, one of the best sons of the people, selfless fighter for the cause of the liberation of the international working class, was treacherously murdered. On the contrary, at that time also, they hastened to take under their wing those against whom the people's wrath was directed. It is all the more scandalous that just at this time, when around the heroically fighting Spanish people, a real international united front of struggle is being created against the rebel generals and against German and Italian fascism for the protection of the Republic and of democracy, Citrine and company come forward with their hostile demonstration against the land of socialism, the most solid and unshakable bulwark of the liberties of the people. What can these advocates of Trotsky, Zinoviev and Kamenev say in view of the irrefutable facts? Has it not been proved that Trotsky, whom reactionary socialist leaders made a great song about at one time, is the organizer of individual terrorism in the Soviet Union? It has been proved. Has it not been proved that his accomplices, Zinoviev, Kamenev and others, prepared terroristic attempts in the course of a number of years on Comrade Stalin, the greatest leader and organizer of the triumph of socialism, and against his best companions in the fight, leaders of the party and the Soviet power? It has been proved. Has it not been proved that this terrorist gang murdered Kirov? It has been proved. Has it not been proved that these despicable terrorists worked in league with the Gestapo, that is, with the secret police of German fascism, the most savage enemy of the working class, the bestial persecutor and torturer of communists, socialist and non-party workers? It has been proved. Has it not been proved that the counter-revolutionary terrorists, in their foul underground existence, cultivated the habits and customs of the fascist executioners who set the Reichstag on fire and later destroyed persons who took part in that outrage? It has been proved. All this was proved in an open session of the Soviet court, in the presence of representatives of the international press. It was confirmed by the categorical admissions of the defendants themselves. Driven into a corner by the facts and the irrefutable evidence, they fully admitted having committed the crimes with which they were charged, and did not deny their political and organizational connection with fascism. Is it not a fact that in their last speeches the accused, one after the other, admitted the heinousness of their crimes against the working class, but Citrine, Adler, and some others come forward in their defense? Ridiculous and pitiable are the statements of these leaders about granting the accused their due rights. They were given every possibility of saying whatever they liked. They were given the right to choose their defending counsel, to call witnesses, to demand examination of the evidence, etc., but they renounced the right of choosing defending counsel, to call any witnesses, and to deliver speeches in their defense, for the chain of their crimes was too obvious and indisputably proved. Their crimes were proved before the whole world in public trial by documents, facts, material evidence. The criminal conspirators were caught red-handed, weapons in hand, with passports in their possession obtained from the agents of the Hitler Gestapo, with explosives. The court was given documentary proof of the personal leadership of the terrorists by Trotsky, who had sent them to the Soviet Union to murder Stalin and to organize terroristic acts against the leaders of the socialist state. Overwhelming proof of the guilt of the Trotsky-Zinoviev terrorists was produced at an open trial. It was clearly proved that Trotsky, Zinoviev, and their gang stood on the other side of the barricades, in the same camp as those who are fighting against the Spanish people, sending airplanes, weapons, and munitions to the rebel generals, and carrying on counter-revolutionary intervention in Spain. Citrine and the rest are trying to justify their intervention on behalf of the terrorists, the enemies of the Soviet power, by pointing to the necessity of maintaining proletarian solidarity with the fighting working class in Spain. They try to create the impression that the trial of the counter-revolutionary terrorists in the Soviet Union endangers the fulfillment of this proletarian solidarity with the Spanish people. But that is an obvious lie. The trial of the terrorists, agents of fascism, is an integral part of the anti-fascist struggle of the international working class. True solidarity with the Spanish people is not compatible with the protection of the agents of fascism in other countries. One cannot sincerely support the Spanish people, which is fighting against fascism, and at the same time play the part of protector of the terrorist rabble in the Soviet Union, which is helping fascism. Whoever supports counter-revolutionary terrorists in the USSR, directly or indirectly, is at bottom serving the ends of Spanish fascism, disrupting the fight of the Spanish people and facilitating the latter's defeat. This action of the leaders of the Labour and Socialist International and of the International Federation of Trade Unions tends to undermine the solidarity of the international proletariat with the proletariat of the Soviet Union. It is a blow to the movement toward unity of the working class of the world. It is directed toward shattering the united front of the working people against fascism in Spain, France, and other countries. This action of Citrine and the others is a direct blow against the heroic fight of the Spanish people, for if the Spanish people were to follow the foul advice which the reactionary socialist leaders permit themselves to offer to the peoples of the Soviet Union, the Spanish Republic would be doomed to defeat. It is just because the counter-revolutionary generals too long went unpunished that the Spanish people is having to make such sacrifices, because measures were not taken in good time against the fascists, who were secretly preparing a conspiracy against the people. There is no reason to doubt that Hitler and Mussolini, Generals Franco and Mola, the fascists of France and of other countries, all sworn enemies of the unity of the working class and the People's Front, all enemies of democracy, of socialism and of the Soviet Union, will welcome this scandalous act, for the step taken by Citrine and Adler tends to deepen the split in the ranks of the world working class movement and plays into the hands of international reaction. It would be wrong to put the responsibility for this action on all the parties and organizations which belong to the Labour and Socialist International and to the International Federation of Trade Unions. They certainly did not empower Citrine and Chenevels, De Brucker and Adler to come forward in defense of Trotsky, Zinoviev and Kamenev, who organized terrorist acts against the leaders of the great Soviet country. They did not empower these leaders to take the accused, the allies of German fascism and the Gestapo agents, under their protection. They did not instruct them to make use of the trial of the terrorist gang for a new slander campaign against the Soviet Union and for a rupture of the united front against fascism. It is the bounden duty of the millions of supporters of unity in the ranks of the Labour and Socialist International and of the IFTU, in connection with the disgraceful intervention of Citrine and the others, to administer a rebuff to the saboteurs of the United Front. It is high time to put an end to their coming forward in the name of the workers' organizations, to the detriment of the united struggle against the common enemy. The example of the accused degenerates plainly reveals to everybody how renegades, double-dealers, who, like Trotsky, make play with radical phrases, act as wreckers in the ranks of the labor movement, and carry out the villainous work of fascism. Now even the most short-sighted people can see for what purpose Trotsky needed the formation of a Fourth International, and whom this dirty crowd of crazed, petty bourgeois individualists, self-centered careerists, agents of the Gestapo and of the secret police of other countries are serving. To be able to display keen class vigilance at every step, to learn how to expose concealed enemies, to know how to expose double-dealers and agents of the class enemy, and to remove them ruthlessly and in good time from the ranks of the proletarian organizations, this is one of the most important lessons of the trial for the workers' movement in all countries. We do not doubt that all organizations of the working class will administer a well-merited rebuff to the anti-Soviet efforts of the Citrines, that they will strengthen and develop the United Front movement and rally millions of working people around the just national war of the Spanish people against the rebel generals who are supported by the Italian and German fascists, that they will rally the working class against fascism and its contemptible accomplices, the Trotskyist plotters.